behind this conversation. It's been going on. It's been the order really of the day since the release of the state capture report this past week. Rather, now at the heart of the conversation is whether its recommendations can indeed be implemented, and what happens if they are not. And of course, we now take that closer look at that state capture report in conversation now with ActionSA leader Herman Mashaba. Good to have you with us tonight here on In Focus. First and foremost, do you believe that the report itself, at least the first part of it, is something that is worth the amount of money that was spent on it?
Well, good evening, Tab, and good evening to Newzroom Afrika listeners. I think the report, I think the Zondo Commission itself was actually a blessing for this country, because you can imagine if we did not really have this, we've not had this commission, some of the issues that came out and emerged out of this commission, South Africans would not have known. So as much as, yes, it's cost us R1 billion, but at least majority of South Africans, if not all South Africans, are aware of the deep-rooted corruption of the ANC over the last 27 years. So for me personally, as far as I'm concerned, it was money worth spending.
The success of it then looks something like being able to carry out its recommendations and implement them to the latter without fear or prejudice. Do you believe our law enforcement institutions are qualified and capable to be able to do that without the political interference?
Well, I don't personally believe that our law enforcement agencies actually, they've got the will to really prosecute these people who've looted our limited state resources. Because you can imagine if we had an impartial law enforcement agencies, would not have been there to spend R1 billion of the Zondo Commission. This money should have actually went into the investigation of those cases. But unfortunately, our law enforcement agencies have been captured the last almost 20 years of our democracy. A lot of political interference, and it's been getting worse. We thought under the new dawn with President Cyril Ramaphosa, things will improve. But in fact, right now, as we speak, corruption in this country is at all-time high, because it's actually a free-for-all. And we are seeing no action whatsoever happening. Look at what happened with the 8 days in July. Let's look at the recent events with the burning down of our parliament. I watched the president being interviewed by various media houses yesterday in Polokwane. And the president, for him, is like a joke. He laughs about these matters of such a very serious nature, because he knows nothing will happen. That's why I'm one of those South Africans in full support of private prosecution route. I've had experience, Thabo, as a mayor of the city of Johannesburg for 3 years, uncovering over 34 billion rands of cases. Some of those cases, you don't even have to be a policeman or a woman, that the cases are so clear, but there's absolutely no interest whatsoever in pursuing those cases.
Yeah, exactly what you say. You're saying you're in full support of such an initiative leading up to 2024. Why do you believe you've got to give them at least 2 years?
We waited 27 years, and in the 27 years, every day is getting worse, and we can't really sit back until ANC, as they collapse, because they are going to collapse, and we should really, as South Africa, do everything possible to avoid the collapse of the ANC, not to be followed by the collapse of the country. So if we are not going to do anything in the next 2.5 years leading to 2024, South Africa might not really be there economically.
Yeah. In your experience, I mean, what would it take for the kind of complexity and the kind of corrupt dealing that was going on, which even the Commission of Inquiry is really touching the tip of the iceberg, saying we need to dig deeper and investigate even further some of these transactions? And what does it take to be able to successfully prosecute privately that kind of degree of crime?
Look, one thing that we must accept, and I think fortunate enough I've got practical experience and evidence of the reluctance of the NPA to actually pursue, refusing us to pursue private prosecution. I tried when I was the mayor of the city of Johannesburg. Unfortunately, I had to leave before the expiry of my term. But I've actually tried even when I was out of office to pursue some of the cases, and there is total reluctance by the NPA to give us knowledge certificates for you to really be able to pursue cases on a private basis. That is why it's going to be important for civil society to stand up to say, no, this is unacceptable. If you are not prepared to prosecute these cases, then allow us as private citizens of this country, because the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa does allow, has given the NPA the authority to say, if you are not, you feel this case is not, you cannot prosecute, then allow private prosecution. And unfortunately for you to prosecute, as I say, you've got to be given the probably knowledge certificate by the NPA. And there is, at this point in time, as I'm talking to you, total reluctance. So the only way I believe we can succeed with this is to really mobilize civil society, conscientize them about all this risk. But we must be determined. We must not be discouraged by their reluctance.
Yeah. What route are you going to take? In fact, that would have been the next question. What route are you going to take to get the NPA to admit that it needs help?
Well, it doesn't need help. It needs a political will. It needs the will to really want to really do it. And one thing that I think as South Africans we must accept is that the ANC is not going to give them the political support that they require. So we need, as a country, independent criminal justice system that is free from political interference. I think the sooner we can get to 2024 so that we can bring back the scorpions and bring back the scorpions with more powers, with more political, less political interference. As South Africans are really, all of us, let us really look at a system where we take away most of the political, most of the powers from the president, where the head of the NPA should not really be appointed by the president of the country. Let that person, that man or woman who's going to sit on this very important institution, to be independent of political interference, because we've already had 27 years of our experience. Now you can imagine 2024 is going to be 29 years. So I really believe South Africans, so please let us look at really changing our system, take away some of the powers from the president, because our constitution, as much as we've hailed it as the best constitution in the world, unfortunately it was based on President Nelson Mandela. We based our constitution on a man that obviously had good intentions, and he demonstrated this. Unfortunately, subsequent to him moving out of office, our constitution is still really based on Nelson Mandela. So we need to really look at a new framework, look at a framework where we are saying, as South Africans, just to say, we don't really trust our president to really have such massive power. So I think really this is one of the constitutional amendments that we have to really strive for going forward. But under the ANC, we know they are not going to accept it, but we will remove them democratically in 2024, put in a government that must immediately ensure that we effect such constitutional amendments to take away some of the powers from the president.
Yeah. For Project ActionSA, you are willing to even put your own personal family resources behind that project. How much are you willing to put on the line to be able to see that this private prosecution organization is put in place? Who will fund it?
Well, I think, Thabo, is not just one person in this country can afford such a very expensive exercise. And this can't be an individual problem. This is it's a national problem affecting the 60 million plus South Africans. So all of us South Africans, those who believe in the rule of law, those who believe in ethical leadership, let us all get involved in saving this country, because if we are going to continue, allow politicians to loot our limited resources, then we must accept the consequences. And I think and believe very strongly that I challenge all law-abiding South Africans, all those who believe in ethical leadership and saving this country. Let us all really get behind any initiative that is going to save this country. And the prosecution route, it's actually one of those routes that can really save South Africa.
If you look at this particular first part of the report, damning findings around a failure of government, parliament, and of course the governing ANC to keep watch over the resources of the country, and in a sense threatening the democracy of this country because of the procurement corruption that has gone on there. Failure to take action is one of those issues. Now, we're talking earlier on about the fact that to a degree, if you look, for example, at the corruption of PPEs, the capture of state is still to an extent going on right now. What lessons have we learned and what are we doing now so that 10 years from now we are not calling for another commission of inquiry?
Well, the only way you can really stop this is the removal of ANC from power. And the only way we can remove the ANC from power, we have to mobilize and gear ourselves for 2024 national and provincial elections. That's the only way, because I believe very strongly that if we've got to remove the ANC from power, let us do it in a democratic fashion, because the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa does give us such privileges and rights. Let us not really want to remove government by banning our clinics and our road infrastructure and others. Let us really use our democratic rights as South Africans in the Constitution to mobilize civil society, that we vote the ANC out. That's the only way that we can actually save this country. But for as long as we believe that the ANC can self-correct themselves, I can tell you that person must be living in another planet, because the ANC is actually more determined to destroy this country. Honestly, if one is history, someone who likes to read about history, you look at countries all over the world. Normally, you'll see the destruction that we've experienced in recent times. The 8 days in July and so forth. These are driven by ANC factional fights. Nothing really to do with civil society, unlike in other countries where you have civil society being the ones actually destroying public infrastructure, whereas in our case, it's the government itself that is involved because of their own internal battles. So the only best way I can ask South Africans is that 2024 is not really far away, but it can be far away if we don't do something about it now. We need to start mobilizing ourselves to really use our franchise, so look our voting patterns to ensure that we can have a new change of government. And whichever government that we put in charge, let's hold them accountable. We cannot wait another 29 years before we remove them. Every 5 years, we've got to ensure that we remove government that does not actually perform. And in fact, if you look at South Africa, we're in such an ideal constitutional democratic framework, in the sense that every 2.5 years, we've got an opportunity to send a signal to government about our unhappiness with them, because we've just come out of local government elections last year. In 2.5 years, we're going into provincial and national elections. At every stage, yes, South Africans have sent a signal to the ANC government in the local government elections, recent ones. But we have an opportunity now in 2024 to remove them and put in that new government that we must hold accountable.
Herman Mashaba, appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us tonight here on In Focus, leader of ActionSA.